All right, we're going to repair these hands now. I got some flaws I got to pull out of them and stuff and try and get back some of the little wrinkles. The girl I use, she doesn't have a lot of detail. There's still fine wrinkles and stuff. But I'm going to try and salvage them and try and duplicate it. First of all, I want to kind of cut away anything that shouldn't be there, like the air bubbles and different things. There's some little buildup of clay here and there, so I'm just kind of pulling all that out. So you just find the tool that best fits it and slowly take it away. And after you do that, then you want to go and find out any air bubbles, and you want to get rid of those too. I'm not worrying about detailing the hands yet because I have a lot to repair, especially in the under the fingers and stuff. Now I'm adding clay to the fingers to build them up. This is a slow process. I got my clay in this pot here that that's pretty warm. So I'm adding clay to it and slowly building it up and taking it away as I need to. Clay's a little hot right now. That's why I'm using this knife here. I got the pinky blocked out pretty good. This finger is now a good thickness. And then I'll just keep going on these fingers and then I'll work on the other hand. All right, I've got it basically blocked out now. I've added marks where I want the finger creases to be. I made sure that they're a good thickness. So I'm done blocking this one out. Now I'm going to work on the fingertips. This one is actually in a little better shape. Okay, now the hand's built up, I'm adding clay to the bottom here. I made sure I pressed it in really good. Like I say, it's warm clay, so it sticks really well to the cold clay. But that hand is looking pretty good right now. I don't know if I want it a little longer. I might, we'll see. But now I'm going to start on the next hand. The next thing I'm going to do is smooth out this wrist now that I've built up on this hand here. I'm going to use a special instrument. You can actually buy these if you want to. I made these myself with a little copper tubing. This is what you call piano wire up on top here. I went to a piano shop that repairs and sells pianos, and I asked if they had any old piano wire, some thick bass wire, and if they would mind give it to me or I could buy it, and they just handed me a nice big roll and of piano wire that was used, and I attach it to the top of this piece of copper. And what you use it for is you use it for smoothing out. It takes away bumps and it kind of gives everything a kind of a uniform look to it. I'm just kind of knocking down all of this rough clay that I have added to this hand here. And I noticed that there's some repairs that I need to do, like the curve on this one is not totally correct. It looks a little bit like a broken arm. So if I just take this down a little bit, it actually straightens out the hand. I just straighten out the wrist a little bit, and now I'll take this tool and I can actually now bring it into the rest of the arm. Now I'm going to take this tool, which is actually guitar string, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to fine tune my sculpting a little bit and break down a lot of those hard lines that I made with the other tool. And I just keep going through this process with finer and finer tools till I have a loop tool, and I'm just a regular metal loop tool like one of these. Something like that, or something a little bigger like this one, or this side, whatever you want to use. But right now I'm just going to use this guitar string. Put a little clay on the table here where I can tap my clay off of the little wire tool and just keep going. Okay, now I'm going to take some naphtha, and I got a stiff brush here, and I'm just going to go over the areas that I worked on, and I'm just trying to smooth them out just a little bit. And this rough brush with a little bit of naphtha does a really nice job. Like I said, my goal right here is mainly to break up those fine little lines that I've made with my clay sculpting tools. Okay, now I can work on the wrist, which is the same method. Just take your naphtha, slush it around a little bit. You want to try to break up all those lines and then smooth it out. And just repeat the process until you get a nice look to what you're doing. Then I'm going to take the soft brush. This is a soft bristle brush. Dip it in my naphtha, and then I'm going to go up and down like this just to smooth it down. And that's how I get rid of all the main hard lines that I've made with my tools. And after that, you can actually take your thumb now if you want, and you can even smooth it out even more. Just take that thumb down or your finger down and just pull it down. And that will make it nice and clean. And then let this dry a little bit. I mean, some people sculpt right away. I do sometimes, but I'll let it dry now for, I don't know, since it's kind of late, I'll probably leave it overnight and come back tomorrow. I'm working on the nails now, and I'm working on getting that edge of the nail so it looks kind of natural. And I'm taking this sharp dental tool here, and I'm cutting in the edge of the fingernail here. And then I go down here like this, and I try and clean the clay off that I just cut out. Just like that. And then I'll take my naphtha again, and I dry the brush off really well. I just want just a little bit on there just so that I can just take it down just enough so it looks fairly natural. And that's how you do a nail. For this edge here, I took my little tiny loop tool, and I just took it like this, and I carved it down. Just like that. So I carved out the nail. I want the nails to be, you know, everyone's nails are different. I'm adding a little clay right there because I see there's a little tiny dip in the nail. And so I just want to get rid of that little tiny dip. Smooth it out. Okay, now that we got the nails done pretty good, I'm going to start doing texture on the hand. We're going to do some basic smooth texturing. It's going to have a subtle little feel to it. It's from a young girl's hand, and I'm using it for an older girl, a woman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add some veins to the arm right here first before I start doing any texturing. So I rolled out my clay, you know, nice thin little rolls, and I'm going to start applying them to the hands like this. And veins are kind of irregular, so you know you don't want to go always in a straight line. Sometimes you can if you want, but I just kind of pinch the both ends on, and now I'm just smoothing out the edges. I know these look very high, but I will smooth them out even smaller as I go, and you'll see what I mean. They'll be very subtle by the time I'm done. So I'm just going to do this, and I'll do another 1 or 2 veins just to kind of make it look more realistic. And the veins don't have to run all the way up. I mean, everyone's hands are different. You know, the veins in their hands are different, and they go in different directions. So just kind of use your own creativity, and also use reference pictures. They're the best. Now I'm going to take this tool still. This is the flat end of my little sculpting tool I use. And I'm just going to now just kind of make those lines that I made, smooth them out a little bit. All these little blending lines. So now I got my veins in there, just kind of subtly, so that I can start working on texturing. Now I don't know if you can see, there are some textures still left in the hand. So I kind of know what the texture is going to look like a little bit on the ends here, you know. Most arms in general have different types of textures that go kind of this way and that way in etching. So that's basically what we're going to do for this hand, is do that. And the tool I'm going to use is something that I made. This is actually from a dog brush that I made myself. I just took some glue. You can use epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, or there's a thing called Goop that we use, that I use sometimes for making tools. And I took a piece of popsicle stick, I glued it onto it, and I set it on top of this paintbrush handle. That's all this is a paintbrush handle. And that is my dog brush, little tiny bit, and this is what I use a lot for texturing. So to start texturing, what we're going to do is I'm just going to take this tool and I'm going to start going across it like this, and you're going to see clay bead up, and that is okay. Clay is going to bead up a lot, and what we're going to eventually do is brush that clay off, but right now we are just going to texture it. And I just keep going like this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my direction a little bit. I'm going to start cross-hatching it a little bit, because I noticed that, you know, skins have that kind of look to it. And I'm just going to keep going with it. I'm not going to brush those little beads off yet. I'll do that off when I get to the end, because what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't have any breaks in my pattern. I just want to keep going and making it the texture that I like. And I'm just going to keep going around. See all that clay bead up? I'll be taking that off in a little bit. Sometimes you may not want to take that clay off, depending on how rough you want the skin, but I want the skin smooth with just a slight subtle texture to it, so I will take that off with a chip brush, you know, one of these brushes, just wipe it down, which I'll show in a little bit. All right, I've gone through, I scraped this way, I scraped this way, and the last thing I did was I scraped this way, just because I find that the lines are, you know, kind of going both directions, but it depends on the hand, I guess the arm. But I just tried to keep that direction a little bit, and then as I came into the hand up here, I kind of feathered it in. So I did put a lot. And now I'm going to take my chip brush here, and I'm just going to knock all those little beads off now. Like I say, if you're doing an older gentleman's hand or something, an arm, you know, it might have more beads, it'll have a rougher texture, and then you may want to leave those beads on. But I am actually just taking them off and just being gentle. Talcum powder, just in here, or baby powder is all this is, and a brush, and you're gonna coat the hand, the arm, and then you're gonna use that talcum powder, and you're just kind of knocking it down even further. Remember, textures, skin textures, or any type of textures that you deal with animals, it's layers, lots and lots of layers. And you'll see that the more you brush it in, the softer you make that texture. You're not taking the texture away, you're just making it more subtle. And you get a really nice texture, skin texture from this. And this is only one method. There's many methods for doing skin textures. I'm really bending those bristles, but I'm not bending them enough where I will dent the clay. So I'm just being very careful that way. And there we have a nice skin texture. And that's just the wrist and the arm. I'm going to work on this part now where I put those veins in. They're there and they're quite nice. So now I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to go over these now. And the more you go over them, you'll notice that they will start breaking down, and that's just what we want. We want that subtleness. We don't want those veins to be bouncing out too much. So I'm just going to keep going like this and breaking those down. And I'm following the textures here. I see there's some texture up here. So I'm trying to carry that through a little bit. And as you can see, I'm going different directions as I go. And I'm blending it into the wrist still. That's very important. The palm already has some texture in it, so I am not going to go too close to that palm. I'm just going to kind of stay clear of it a little bit. I'm just kind of going lightly now. As you can see, not a lot of clay beads, because I want it to kind of blend into the natural textures that are already in the wrist and hand. I did some repairs in here, so I'm going to add a little bit of textures in there and kind of follow it how I see there's already some natural ones. So I'm just trying to imitate as best as I can. And the real trick is when you knock it down and you smooth it flatter, you can see how close you've really gotten to their skin texture. I mean, this may be an exaggeration a little bit, but I find that when I cast something, I think I lose about 20% of my texture, you know, through the mold process and making a duplicate. You know, it's like a Xerox copy, you know, it doesn't turn out exactly. There is still some loss in every mold. Okay, now I'm going to take my chip brush now, and I'm going to take all that little beads down. Take them all away, or as many as I can. They oftentimes will stick, and you got to kind of push them away, but just lightly. Baby powder, and I'm going to try and coat that hand as best I can. Just like that. The reason why you use baby powder is what it does, it gets into the cracks. And when it gets into the cracks and you start wiping your way, it actually holds those little textures. So you want to use it that way. As you notice, I'm not using naphtha right now. I use naphtha to smooth out the hand and to make stuff like that. But this one is a kind of a dry texture technique. And you know, some people still will use naphtha or alcohol for that. But for me right now, I am just trying to get very subtle stuff going. So I got the back of the hand now done. I'm going to work on the fingers next, and then I'll get into the middle of the palm here a little bit. There are some areas that have little air bubbles and stuff that I want to repair. I got my tool again, and I'm going to start looking at some of these textures here because I want to duplicate what's already there. I don't want to cover up what's already there. I just want to kind of try my best to match what's there. So if I see stuff coming down, I put a bunch of little ones in, and a few will dig deeper, which is great because that adds, you know, variations in the skin texture. You don't want all the lines the same. You don't want to take one little pokey tool like this and just, you know, and start making lines. You can use them for single longer lines, but if you're doing like little tiny lines, it's best to have something that will give you a variety of lines in it. Just subtle. I just want to carry those textures through. And like I said, this isn't the only way to do skin textures. This is just how I like to do it. And I know other artists do it this way, effects artists, but I know there are many different techniques depending on the person and how advanced they are. Okay, I'm looking at the hand. I see I need to make some lines under here, under the thumb. The thumb print looks really nice, and there's some interesting creases on it, so I'm going to leave that alone. So I'm just going to try and get in here and just add a few lines to this area here, because I think that's where I had to repair the hand. So just go on in here and just cut some lines in there. Nice and easy. I did some repairing. If you remember, I had to repair actually almost the entire underside of all these fingers because there were just air pockets in the mold. And the palm, it has some interesting lines that I'm going to actually enhance a little bit. Right now I'm just adding the little fine lines. Remember, sculpting. When you're doing detail work, it's layers. You're always adding layers. I'm adding little fine lines, I'll add some thicker lines, and then I'll add more fine lines, and all those are what make it look real. Then I take my talcum powder, and I'm going to coat them really well. Because then I take my chip brush and I just rub that talcum powder into those crevices and try and make those lines look subtle. Now what I need to do is I need to make the lines that are in the palm. Some of them are here. I'm just looking at the lines in there, and I can see that she does have, you know how mine is quite apparent, the M, you know that M here? She has a very subtle M, it's kind of broken up, so I'm just trying to find those lines and imitate them. Like that. You can use, I'm taking my baby powder and I'm just going to knock them down so they're even more subtle. But they look natural. And like I say, I'm being a little rough on this brush, but it actually looks really nice. So now that hand is done. So I'll do the other hand, and then the next video will be on how to cast a clay pour hand.